All right, I want to welcome everyone. It is 12 o'clock, and while I still know that individuals will be arriving, I do have a lot of content that myself and the team are going to share. So I want to get started in a timely manner here, even though there will be people arriving as we go. So first of all, let's just talk about why we are here, why this webinar even exists. And that really is, the three of us here talking, we go and we see industry all the time. So my name is Mick Fox. I'm the COO here at TechnoMile. And my job is that I go out and I talk to prospective clients and clients every single day. And what I'm looking at and having a conversation about is what tools are you all using? What are the good? What are the bad about the tools? And a lot of our conversations over the last year and a half have been, Mick, what about AI? There's so much AI out there. There's so many people calling me every single day about their new AI tool. It's overwhelming. So we thought it'd be good to have this conversation today, talking about exactly what is going on with AI, specifically across capture and proposals. And with that, you will be introduced to the other speakers here today in just a moment after I get through some housekeeping rules. But that is the point of today, is we're going to talk about AI, how it's used across capture and proposals. A few items of housekeeping, you can read them all here. We're going to have everybody on mute. Please go ahead and use the Q&A button. For any questions you would have for any of us, you should be able to see that over to the right of your screen. And then everything that you're going to see here today is being recorded, so therefore it can be shared with any of you at any time after the event. So with that, I would like to introduce everybody who is on stage with me here today. I've already introduced myself. My name is Mick Fox. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at TechnoMile. I also want to introduce Holly Trombly. She is the Corporate Proposal Director for Torch Technologies, which is a defense and federal services contractor specializing in engineering and mission support for the U.S. military and government agencies. With nearly 2 decades of BD and proposal management experience, Holly has been instrumental in writing and winning contracts with the Department of Defense, the federal government in general, and also with commercial customers. So very broad range of experience. And I think more importantly, she has a lot of experience in implementing not just BD and proposal tools, but AI influenced BD and proposal tools. So welcome, Holly. And then also I'd like to introduce Vishwas Lele. He is the CEO and co-founder of pWin.ai. It is an AI first capture and proposal platform that helps companies submit higher quality proposals and win more business. And just for complete awareness, which we'll talk about, Vishwas and I actually were the two people who put this together. We entered into a strategic partnership between TechnoMile and pWin.ai. And Vishwas was the leader in putting that together. He's very passionate about AI. If you ever happen to have a conversation with Vishwas, he will talk to you about AI and the benefits and the negatives of AI, and that's what pWin.ai was built from the ground up all about. So welcome, Vishwas. So with that, as I just got done saying, there is a partnership in place between TechnoMile and pWin, and I want to fully put that on the stage for everybody to see, so you know when we're having conversations exactly how that partnership came to be and why it exists. So TechnoMile, we have really focused on, in our 10 years of having our software out there, we have really focused on finding opportunities, helping companies qualify opportunities, and then more importantly, how to actually capture those opportunities. How do you win more business during the capture stages? And we routinely were asked, that's great, Mick, we love it. Where's your proposal writing capability? And that's where the conversation between Vishwas and I began many months ago, where we looked at all the different proposal writing capabilities that are out there. And we really focused in on pWin because of the AI focus and the capabilities of pWin.ai. And ultimately, the way that our relationship works is that the information and everything that we do in TechnoMile is shared with and integrated into the pWin.ai solution. So it's the exchange of data between the two systems that really is the foundation of the technology solution, what our customers will see. But at a corporate level, the culture is AI using it to help benefit our customers, both from selecting opportunities, capturing those opportunities, and then handing all that information you gathered during your capture, handing that off to your proposal system. So that's what our relationship is. That's what it's all about. And obviously, contact either of us or our teams, and we'd love to talk to you more about that. Enough of the sales pitch for that and the relationship. I really want to dig into the agenda and get into the conversation here. You can see all the different areas we're going to talk about over the course of the next hour, but really there's a common thread through all of this discussion, which is we are all flooded every single day with another AI application, another AI option. And those options go everywhere from very, very thin, basically just a wrapper, all the way down to really deep AI options. And we wanted to have this conversation today and all the subjects that you see up here on your screen, and really have a conversation about those two areas. When is it best to keep it just kind of on the level and just be shallow? And then where is it responsible and worthy to go deep with that? So we're going to cover these 6 different agenda items over the course of the next 53 minutes. And so with that, we would like to open up with a poll. So if everyone would please go ahead and answer the poll question, and that is, really, we want to get an understanding of everybody who is online with us here this morning, this afternoon. Where is your organization right now with AI for BD for your capture and proposals? And you can see the answers here. One of those, the options for your answers here, and would love you all to go ahead and click and respond. I'll just wait a few moments here. All right, it looks like the responses are slowing down, but everybody can see as well as I. This is very common to what very common to what we see out in the market. As everyone can see, there is a lot of activity here. When I'm looking at all those answers, what I saw was we're either using a generic one, and there's a lot of reasons to that we're going to discuss. They're pretty good, right? I mean, and they're quote unquote cheap. Now I'm putting that in quotes because we're finding that they're not as cheap as they say they are. But I also saw in that response that many of you are already using AI tools. And so that's what we're hearing. So everybody's piloting in some phase of really just getting used to these different tools, either piloting those tools or you are beginning to use those tools and figure out what you like and don't like. So thank you for everyone to respond to that, and that will help guide our conversation as we get to the next topic, which is really all about the shallow versus deep in the world of doing business with the federal government, which tends to be highly regulated. Although we all know who are on this call, the world is changing. The world is absolutely changing right before our very eyes. AI has changed the world. This new administration has changed the world. Some of it is temporary, some of it is everlasting. And with that, how is AI going to really affect that? So I want to start off with my first question to the panel, and that is, the market is saturated with AI tools that claim end-to-end coverage. I mean, any of us can go out there and just do an AI search on, hey, show me the tools, and you're going to see, I bet you no less than 50 tools that claim to be able to be using AI to be able to help with this business process. Some go deep, some don't go deep at all. And so what are the actual, I'm asking this to Holly. First, I'm going to head to Vishwas on this initially. And so Vishwas, what are the actual implications of running a shallow tool through a federal acquisition workflow versus a deep one? So Vishwas, you want to give us your take on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mick, for the kind introduction. So this is a very important question about shallow and deep. What we are seeing, and I'm sure Holly will agree, we're seeing in the market a lot of tools that claim to do everything, right? We can be your pipeline manager, we can be your CRM, of course, we can be your proposal writer, and we can also do contract management. And Mick, you talked about the partnership, and through this interaction, I've learned how much depth that TechnoMile has gone into in understanding capture and doing contract lifecycle management. So if a tool is claiming to be doing everything, that means you're essentially getting a jack of all trades. And federal acquisition and the kinds of bids that people are putting together, they're high stakes games, and they're not for jack of all trades. So that's one important thing to know, that you can get apps, but you cannot get platforms. Well, that I mean, you can LLMs. We know they're getting smart all the time. They will produce some content for you quickly, and it seems like it's doing a lot of work. But then, are you getting the depth of writing? And I know we'll get into how the capture flows into and quality of writing later. But if you're trying to be everything to everybody, then you're not trying to be the best practices driven, the high quality tool, and you're not taking advantage of things that people have already invested in, organizations have already invested in. And you talked about some things, Mick, earlier about capture and contract lifecycle management.
Perfect. So thank you, Vishwas. Holly, you're the industry person on here. You're the one who has to respond to all these RFIs, RFPs, et cetera. And I also know, having gotten to know you, that you've evaluated a lot of AI tools from a contractor. Can you give us your read on what you're seeing in the market?
Yeah, I mean, and to follow up on that, I receive, and I'm sure everybody else does, a lot of emails all the time about new tools or what people can do for me. And upfront, I think anybody that's using these, and whether you're using one now or you're looking to use one, you really need to focus on what you need as a company and what you want as a company. They're two different things, needs and wants. What is the absolute need you have? And then what are the additional wants you have? And then determine what tool is best for those wants and needs. But that points to kind of the larger issue that we have is there's so many tools in the market space right now that you really have to look at those wants and needs and parse, can that tool actually do what you need or not? And it's also towards the changing environment that we're having in the market space in terms of, government contracting and stuff like that. We have to do things quicker. We have to do things faster when we're responding. And our AI needs to do that as well. And so, what tool you choose has to be working towards your needs and not providing generic rework or content. And we need a tool that works for us, but not us working for the tool. And, I found that shallow tools will kind of give you a content, and then we have to spend time doing rework, revisions. And you'll hear me say this later too, is we always have to review the content that's coming out of AI. But if you have a more detailed, in-depth tool, it's hopefully parsing down that rework that we have to do and using tools that are focusing on discriminators, our company-specific past performance, our writing style. That saves us time, that saves us money. And at the end of the day, that's what my leadership wants, but it's also what my employees want, is to cut down on all of this for rework and make our lives easier.
Fantastic. I guess, and I'll close this out before we go on to the next slide. From the TechnoMile view on this about shallow versus deep, shallow to us is if Claude can do it, if OpenAI, if they can do it, there's no reason for TechnoMile to do it. Therefore, that's what I mean by shallow. All these tools are really just more of a wrapper around those LLMs that are out there. So the way that we look at this, it actually harkens back to my days of when I was a government contractor, and there was a concept that I'm sure many people online are familiar with, which was an Intel Fusion Center. And when you think about from a government contractor perspective, what that is you're bringing in open source information, you're bringing in human intelligence information, you're bringing in signal information. And really, if all you had was open source information for the brains that were sitting in the center, your decision, what you will do is based upon limited intel. So my fear of people just using shallow tools out there is you're missing so much of the signal from what I would call public-private information, such as task orders. We all know how important that is. All the information that exists there, what I call private information, which is the company's private information, your CPAR scores, your other information about who you are, your HRIS system, et cetera. And then what I call private information, which are resumes, et cetera. So if you're only using, and this is what I mean by shallow, the one that's only using open source information, that's a very limited answer that you get, no matter how good your prompt is. You're only going to get so much information back from it. So when people ask me what should they be looking at, whether or not they use TechnoMile or not, it's you've got to have the ability to bring in all these different signals to be able to make the responses actually be deep and meaningful. So that's when I look at it, I really try and advise folks on what information are you using and how good are the agents leveraging all of that information. So if we can move on to the next slide. On this slide, we want to dive into connecting the dots between capture intelligence, which we all know can last a few weeks if it's a task order, to many years. I worked on a deal that lasted 5 years during the capture process, and taking all that information from the capture intelligence process and then moving it into that proposal room. Believe it or not, we used to hang paper on walls, right? And do wall walks and things like that. So how does all this information that's sitting in the capture team's head, how does that make it into into actual proposals? So I really want to move over to you first, Holly, because this is your world. You're on the receiving end of all of this. And for the capture to proposal handoffs, and I know you've actually done some captures yourself, but you're primarily focused on the proposal side. You've seen these handoffs, and I'd love to ask you the question, where do you see it go wrong? And do you have any best practices specifically when using these AI tools on how to make it go right?
Yeah, I mean, and this will fall back to your previous comment as well. I just want to make this point is communication. I think a lot of times I have people that have the best intentions in the world, and they're like, I'm going to go use ChatGPT and put our company information in it. Please don't do that. And I have to be like, that's proprietary. So to that comment you had above, like, absolutely, you can't be using proprietary information, COO, into a, ChatGPT. But that goes to this question too, is communication. I have done capture, I've done BD, I've done proposals, and right now, I'm proposals, but working still on capture stuff. And so it's almost communication across the whole thing, is that the capture team and the communication with the proposal team, and they have to be basically in lockstep. One doesn't drop out of the process. Capture doesn't drop out of the process when it goes to proposals, because they're needing to provide content for customer information, intelligence, discriminators, win themes. They went and talked to the customer and this is their issue with this. We need to have AI weave those into our responses or check for those responses, and parse in terms of seeing, like, is there a capability gap that customer needs? AI can really help structure and surface any of the content that we need to move from capture to proposals. But it has to be put into something first, which means you have to have a database. If you're looking for capability gaps, you need a database. AI is usually going to help a lot more than using an internal SharePoint that, capture can go look at and then say, hey, we're missing this. Or you look at it and you go, hey, what past performance or boilerplates or win themes are throughout your whole piece. AI is really the helping partner that we're finding to be pulling out those pieces that you're hoping an evaluator will find, but doesn't necessarily do it. And also weaving it into what you're writing as well. It's twofold. It's writing and it's evaluation. And it does it a lot quicker than we can do it. And it can tell us when we aren't.
That's fantastic. And I will say, Holly, just kind of leveraging a point that you said before I, Vishwas, ask you a question here is, you know, I'm sure that none of you have this, but when I managed BD teams out there for government contractors, they did not like it when I said, yeah, you got to put all this information into your capture deck or all this information into whatever document I had them writing. And then all of a sudden, it's like we dropped all that off at school as we went to a different place to actually for the proposal. And they're like, Mick, you're making me write it twice. So, really, and this does go to why, TechnoMile formed a partnership with pWin is you talk about communication, handing all of that information that you gathered, whether it had been 2 weeks or 2 years, off to the proposal team. So that way that the BD people who hate administrative work, they don't want to rewrite things twice. Getting all that into the proposal system and getting that all into the proposal team is absolutely paramount. Otherwise, you lose win themes. People forget, why did we write this? So being able to hand that information off to the proposal team, so that way the proposal has the best chance about ability to respond. That's really the key. That was your point about communication. So with that, Vishwas, I want to hand the microphone off to you. So from your side, who's really focused on the proposal creation side of things, you're the recipient of all this capture information. So once the capture and all that context lands in your lap, in pWin.ai's lap, what do you actually do with it?
No, thank you for framing it up in that manner. So I think you and Holly have done a great job of laying out the importance of capture. I would not belabor that point, but I'll give you a perspective and I'll tie it back to the shallow and deep conversation that we were having a moment ago, Mick. So let's say you give us this information, and this is really important information, assuming the capture people have done the job and they truly understand the motivation for that solicitation, right? AI is not going to replace the proposal judgment, right? That really belongs to you. So you get this capture information, and what we do with that is really important. And that's where the difference between a shallow and a deep tool comes into play. Because we all know this. You can tell AI and say, please write me a draft. And by the way, in the second paragraph, I'm going to provide you this capture information. And if you're a shallow tool, it will just merge that information and it will just sort of produce some output. And in some cases, it will infuse it correctly. In other cases, it might drop. Ultimately, it is about deterministic approach to making sure that all your capture points are correctly infused. Without getting too much into the technicality of that, but Mick and Holly, LLMs suffer from the same problem that we humans suffer. If you give them 10 things, hey, remember these 10 things of capture that you need to really write here, they might take 1, 3, and 5 and forget some others in the middle. So we have explicit handling in our tool that says, this capture information is worth its weight in gold. People have worked hard on it. You can't lose that information. And what we do is we tell the language models to make sure that they're infusing that content correctly. So that's one part. Capture does you no good if it does not get, in a zero transmission manner, get translated into your proposal content. So that's a very important thing. And when you're evaluating the tools for the attendees, ask these questions. How can I be sure? So that aspect is so important to us that not only we try to take all of this infusion content or capture information, bring it all the way down, but we also give you traceability back that this paragraph is because you said something in capture. So it's both ways. So that's one quick point, Mike. The other thing I would say is our partnership is, of course, like you mentioned, you're giving us capture information and we are flowing that in. I think Holly mentioned it earlier. Ultimately, good proposal writing is all about evidence that you have collected, metrics-driven evidence. That's ultimately the hallmark of capture. So the bidirectional nature of this partnership is that if we can elevate those proof points and metrics and bring it to capture managers, they have that as part of their conversation, and that causes that flywheel effect to happen. So these tools have an important role to play in making these capture content appear inside your proposal drafts. Mick, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Vishwas. All right, if we can move on to the next here. I did want to put this up, not to make everybody squint and look at the slide, but we keep talking about the capture process. And I did ask the team to go ahead and put this up just so that way you understand, everybody, we all have a collective understanding. When TechnoMile is talking about the capture process, most of us were brought up in the Shipley world, and we've all realized whatever it is, 96 steps of the capture process they have, all great, but none of us actually execute all 96 steps. So when we've narrowed it down here at TechnoMile to say these are really the core elements, especially in today's world where commerciality, you have to think about what you're doing and looking at commercial solutions, because this administration has really emphasized, hey, don't build something if there's a commercial. So you got to consider that as part of your solution, and also about fixed price. So you'll see a lot of emphasis here in the solution. So I just wanted to put this up on the screen for everybody who's listening and say, well, when they talk capture, what is it they're talking about? Well, this is what we're talking about when we talk about the capture. But as you'll see where it says pre-proposal and proposal, that's the handoff point that I know everybody on this webinar have lived through. This is what Holly and Vishwas and I have been talking about. All that information that was gathered on the left-hand side up to that point somehow has to make it into these stages so somebody like Holly can take it and turn it into a winning document. So I just wanted the opportunity to put this up in front of everybody to make sure that we're all agreeing this is what capture. Just a quick little side note, there was a great story that the Churchoff group put out there that I would invite everybody to go read, where they talk about how capture is actually changing. Not just because of this administration, just because of how AI has changed what it is we're expected to deliver to the government, and also the commerciality influence of it all. So when you read that, I would hope that everybody takes a look back at this to say, okay, I get it. The world of capture, again, these general AI tools that are out there, they don't consider that. They don't think about, well, gosh, the world has changed. How does that affect how my capture should look? How should my RFI response be? How should my RFP? So thank you all for putting this up and giving me a chance to talk to that. And hopefully everybody online recognizes you somewhere in this document, because that's what we're talking about. And hopefully it reflects the views of most of you on the phone here. But if I can, let's go to the next slide then. And let's talk about what's actually working and not working in this world of AI, and what teams are getting wrong, what teams are getting right when they're rolling out AI. And really, Holly, you're the one who's lived this. So I want to give a lot of time to you to be able to speak to this. And I think this is the one where the people that are listening, that they're really going to care about this one the most. So we wanted you to speak to this mostly. So if you wouldn't mind, just share. You have a lot of lessons learned. What's actually working? What are teams getting right when they roll out AI, both for capture and proposals? And if you wouldn't mind, I know you've evaluated a lot of tools. So if you wouldn't mind sprinkling in a lot of what you've seen, tools that are getting it right and getting it wrong. So Holly, would you mind discussing this?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, to your point, is the evolving nature of capture, and I would even say proposals to date, is also impacting what we're choosing to do in terms of AI and use of AI in our proposals and our capture. And that's a key consideration I think we have to take when we're looking at AI right now and tools. But fundamentally, it comes down to needs, cost, because I'm accountable to my leadership on what I can spend or can't spend internally or externally. If you're using your own tool and you're developing it to, keep getting it better and better, and it's doing what you need or not, or using an external tool. And it really comes down to, what are you getting out of the tool? Is it meeting your expectations for everyone? So leadership, capture managers, proposal personnel, because everybody wants something different. And everybody expects something different out of this tool, right? And it's trying to make everybody happy, but within reason, because they're not going to be 100% happy with everything. it's where, how does it roll out? Is your database set up accurately? Is your database set up in a way that's going to help you? What can the tool do? Vice, what can't it do? And how do we figure out? Sometimes it's too late. Sometimes you try a tool and you figure out it's not giving me what I need. And then you have to, relook at other things and go back again. The one thing I have seen, over and over again, and I don't know why this keeps happening, is not vetting the content that's being taken out of our AI tools. I will still get, somebody came the other day and they're like, look, we wrote this RFI and it was 30 pages and, some of it had totally inaccurate content. So we still have to vet it. And AI helps us do our job, but it doesn't take our job away completely. And, we have to ensure with the AI output also, does it sound like us? Does it, do what we want it to do? I noticed we had some the other day, it had a lot of M dashes, and I like an M dash, but I don't like 50 in one paragraph. So you have to make sure that, it's doing what you need it to do. And it sounds so simple, but it really isn't until you see an output of what the AI is doing. In outputting, if that makes sense. It's super simple, but it's not.
Fantastic, Holly. Thank you. Vishwas, I'm actually also reading these Q&A, so I want to get back to the Q&A. But Holly, thank you for that. Vishwas, I do want to bring you in on this one. And Holly raised a lot of great points there. And there's this whole concept, and Holly, you actually said this, I think, at the top of this webinar. You also talked about trust and control over the AI output as well, the input and the output. So Vishwas, over to you. In this, what teams get right, what teams get wrong, and you can talk to any of that, but also if you wouldn't mind bringing into the conversation more the concept of trust and control over the AI. So if you wouldn't mind, Vishwas, how does pWin, how are you handling that, and what's your thought process along those lines?
Yeah, thank you, Mick, and thank you, Holly, for that answer earlier. So to add to that, I think first and foremost, Mick, I'm proud to say that from day one of our journey, we've been very much about responsible AI, which means we are looking at the content that you've provided, your proposal library, and you talked about what are the things that teams that are doing it well are getting it right. Those are the teams that are not just focused on prompt engineering, but focused on the data. It does not help AI if you have a document that is outdated or multiple copies of the same document that confuse the AI. So the teams who are taking a step back and saying, I really need to work on the data, and tools like ours give you a way to say, this is the classification, this is how we tag the document. Do you really want to tag it this way? Do you want to remove it so that AI memory is not an AI's memory? So that's one. The teams who are really getting it right are focusing on that. The second thing goes back to the shallow and the deep problem, is it's very easy to be fascinated by, in 3 minutes, I've gotten these 20 pages generated, and Holly mentioned she looked at that document and things were not right. So speed is not just a virtue if it is not closely tied to the quality. And tools, in the spirit of responsible AI, not only are you responsible for generating the content, but you're also responsible for providing tools for proposal teams and capture teams to check their work. And that's what responsible AI is all about. So an example would be, well, you wrote this content, you made an assertion, and of course it is based on your documents, but still there's a possibility of AI getting it wrong. Can you, at the end of draft generation, take all of the assertions that have been made and check it against the ground reality and flag any things that you want human judgment, proposal judgment to be applied? So teams who embrace this model, teams who want to work on a platform, so their work that is happening, the digital exhaust, if you will, Mick, of the everyday work is fed into improving collectively the team in the organizations. Those are the teams that are getting more value versus on the side, let me quickly in 30 seconds generate a draft, add it to this document, but then I'm responsible for all of the accuracy and things like that. So those are some of the
Great.
things that come to mind. Yeah, thank you.
I want to take a quick pause here because we do have some Q&A, and I don't want to get too far down the road and not come back to it. I want to address some of these things because Connie and Megan have written some fantastic questions out here, and I want to address those. Connie, who's ever running my slides, could you go up one slide? I could not agree with you more. Exploration. Connie, in fact, you just gave me an idea of what our next webinar is going to be about, because that entire plan build that you see to the left here, everything that's underneath there, having to look at the addressable market. Maybe your company is looking at, well, USA just went away. My addressable market just kind of disappeared. Where do I go now? That's the total addressable market you're looking at. Am I going in the right place and exploring the right opportunities? Does your company have a barrier, to entry into a specific market? So exploration, Connie, I could not agree with you more that there are some incredible AI use cases. Very bluntly, that is what TechnoMile now has been for the last year, has been focusing on gathering the content for that, putting together the AI use cases. I know you didn't write that for me or for us, but you kind of teed me up on that one. But I could not agree with you more that exploration is really a critical step. This webinar was really about, great, you've explored, you found you found an opportunity you think is worth your company pursuing. Now let's go ahead and get it fully qualified and take it to proposal. But Connie, you just gave me an idea for our next webinar, so thank you for that. And then you just made a comment about Shipley. We couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's a toolbox of a lot of different processes. And so the point of this win track, that the TechnoMile, we took those best tools and said, okay, these are the ones. And really, I would just say, it's when I talk to hundreds and hundreds of companies that are utilizing the TechnoMile tool, and I ask them, what are the most common steps that you're using? What are your steps? These are the most common. So agree with you on the toolbox. But I do want to go back, Holly, with you. Megan asked a question here that I think is really, it's on the top of mind of everybody who's on here. And we can be open and honest about this. Megan is asking, what are the best AI uses and tools for small proposal shops and small businesses with limited resources? I know I have an opinion, I'm sure Vishwas does, but I want to hand that to you, Holly. So once again, the question is, what are the best AI uses and tools for small business proposal shops and small businesses in general?
Now I'm curious to see if what you two think. For us, I would say one of the biggest gaps we have is capability knowledge across the company and portfolio between divisions. And this speaks to the capture piece of it, is that we have a hard time understanding sometimes where our capabilities are and what past performance we have. AI has done a really, really good job of helping us internally understand our own experience and data, which then helps us better breach new market space, or understand that, if we're going after this contract, we can use this proposal, or this, division has this experience. It's really, really been helpful in terms of compliancy. We have a lot of reviewer fatigue. If you have a small team, you're going back to the well on the same reviewers. A lot of times, it's really having an AI tool that will tell you if you're compliant and why you're not compliant. In shades of gray of compliance, is it meeting a resume requirement? No, because it needs an MS in engineering and you have an MS in philosophy. It'll tell you, hey, this is it. And it's just an additional reviewer. And third, I think for me, and there's a lot of ways it helps, but these are the three I've felt that have helped in terms of limited people, is weaving in win themes and discriminators into a narrative. Because I found that's kind of one of the hardest things that we have as writers sometimes, is focusing on those pieces that are directly customer specific. I can rewrite a management plan all day, but trying to make it customer specific has been, an issue sometimes that we have with writing. So being able to have something that will help you weave that in, but it's not saying it the same way 10 times the same way. It's helping you kind of weave it different ways in, where you're saying the same thing, but not in the same way. So those would be my top three. I don't know if Vishwas or Mick, you guys have differing thoughts on it.
Vishwas, why don't you go ahead? I mean, I do have a thought, but I want to give airtime to Vishwas here. So do you have a thought on that, Vishwas?
Yeah, so Mick, we're talking about Megan's question, right? How can smaller teams use it? And what I would say, Megan, is that whether it's a small team, right? Ultimately, you're looking for a tool that can augment, whether it's a small team or a large team. And often you have to look, you don't have to have, this is one of the fallacies out there, that you have to have a lot of content to get good quality content generated. Even if you're a small team, I'd focus on getting a fewer documents, but make sure those documents are pertinent to whatever pursuits you're going after. But the smaller documents of higher quality are just fine. It's not just about the numbers. And in some ways, tool like ours, where because it has been built with the domain expertise, as Mick said, we are not dogmatic about all the steps, but because it has been built with all of the learnings that you've probably taken Shipley training over the years, because it has been not just been built by engineers or threw together a prompt, but it is written by, in conjunction with thought leaders at Shipley, the first draft that comes out takes into account the best practices, customer centricity, focusing on showing you how you've done this work in the past in a metrics-driven manner. Sometimes smaller teams struggle to get all of this information. So if the tool can do more, I think they will come out ahead also with a tool like this. So I want to be very clear that, hey, if you're a small team, I don't think it's just a matter of, I'll throw together this document and write a prompt. In fact, I would argue in some ways that having the best practices that I talked about content management, about quality of writing, would be equally beneficial to you as a small team as well. Mick?
Yeah, I'll close this out. So Megan, I'll be a little bit more specific. Maybe that's what you're asking. Maybe that's not what you're not, but I'll get more specific. Look, you say, what are the use cases and tools? Let me start with use cases. And I'm going to talk specifically to the capture because I believe the proposal side was really spoken to well here. The best use cases that we've seen are the ones that you see. I don't know if your eyes can see small print like that, but everywhere you see a purple star, those are the most common use cases that we see out there. Hence why we build agents to do that. And you say the tools. The reality is, in most small businesses that I go talk to, they're using the open AI tools. They're using Claude. They're using an open source. That's not the right term. Open source data, because they get their data from open source, but they're using those base LLMs to do it. A lot of small businesses. Now, what is interesting is when I have the conversations about security and aren't you afraid of loading up your documents, there's some leadership, and this will actually tee up our next question. There's some leadership who doesn't care about that. They just say, well, I don't care, my information, I don't view it as that secret or anything. So I'm going to load up past proposals up there so that way I get a better result. I see that in a lot of small businesses. So they don't go to this goes back to that shallow comment that we're talking about. I've seen a lot of small businesses with CEOs who are like, I don't care about security. Go ahead and do it. There's more than a handful of companies out there that are doing that, especially at the smaller. Now, I would say as soon as you cross the line, typically of those who either do business with the DoD or the Intel world or dollar size, you're now at $100 million of revenue or larger, even $50 million or larger, where now that nexus of all of your information becomes your moat, your compelling information. That's where I see smaller businesses and businesses who are becoming larger start to say, I need something specific to us. And the use of those general AI tools stops being so prevalent. And now those companies start focusing on tools that are either containerized specifically for them or tools where they know that the LLM is not getting trained on their on your information. Which by the way, we don't. I know pWin.ai doesn't, and others don't as well. So to close out on your question, really small businesses, less than $50 million, I'm seeing a lot of just general LLMs, which is kind of the point of this webinar, that those are out there, and I see those in use. but it's only using that publicly available information, that open source information. And that, therefore, what I've heard the most common complaint is, I've been told by the government my proposal doesn't look markedly different than other people who have submitted. And that has been the one complaint of these generalized LLMs that I have seen. So John, I'll come back to your question at the end here. And then can I provide a reference? I will, Priest, I don't know what the first name is there, but GP, Priest, I'll absolutely provide that reference. If you just go Google Chertoff Group capture, you'll find the article pretty quickly that I was referencing, but I will make sure it makes it back into this. And then I'll hit the CUI question here at the end. All right, we're down to 14 minutes. Let's get to the value of AI and how you actually go about communicating that. And Holly, once again, we want to rely upon you because you've had to make these cases to your bosses, and you've had bosses, some who really believe in it, say do it no matter what, and you've had bosses that are like, you got to prove to me that it's worth me spending any money on it. So the question to you, Holly, is how do we communicate the value of AI tools to your leadership and different types of leadership? Because I know you and you've had both types of leadership. How do you communicate the value of AI tools to your leadership?
Yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, if you have somebody that's already bought in, it's almost a different conversation than they aren't, because if they're already bought in, they have expectations of what AI is going to do, and that's probably not what your tool is going to do. I know, I'm fully transparent when I talk about what AI can and can't do with my team and my leadership, but it's messaging that changes based upon who I'm talking to. My leadership wants a tool that's going to do faster, more proposals, create more output, increasing the number of proposals submitted for less money in the long run. And AI is great and it's going to help us, but it's not going to be the end all be all to our proposal and or capture issues. There still always has to be a human in the loop, and there has to be human connection and communication that happens with it. My team on the other side, so if you have a leader that's really bought in and really, really is about it, it's making sure they understand what AI can do. If you have a leader that isn't bought into AI, it's showing them what AI can do for us to make things better and easier and in a realistic manner too. And they understand that the implications of what can or cannot do. With our teams, it's a different story. My personnel want to know that whatever we use for AI, that it will help them without bogging them down and making them learn another tool that causes them more stress or might cost them their job. And AI is not going to cost them their job. It's not going to cost all of us our jobs. You have to have a human in the loop no matter what at the end of the day, but it's having them understand that it's there to help. I found that the capture side is way more amenable to AI, and proposals is a little bit more hesitant in some senses to use it in certain areas. If we've done it this way, why don't we keep doing it this way? If this has always worked, why can't we do it? But AI it's not going away, and it's really going to be here forever. And so you have to figure out what's the balance between realism, expectations, and showing people that this will help us and can help us in certain ways. We just have to use AI to make our jobs easier and make ourselves more efficient in certain ways.
All right, Vishwas, I want to hand the microphone over to you. Do you have anything to add? I know you've talked to a lot of executives out there, and you've had conversations with them about some of them seeing value, some of them not seeing value. So would you mind adding from all the conversations you've been having with executives?
Yeah, no, that's a very important question. As Holly said, it depends on starting with what your organization is trying to do, trying to understand where your assets are. And I keep going back to my point about AI can deliver the results for you, assuming you have taken the time to say, okay, where is my proposal library? Holly talked about where are my core competencies. Ultimately, past performance core competency minus the risk is really gives you the probability of winning, right? Have you done past performance? Have you done all the core capabilities that go in, and what are your chances of winning? That's how you have to think about it. So two things to add to what Holly said. Don't forget about all of the prep work that your organization needs to align yourself to get the most of it of AI. That's first and foremost. Second is, I know you've been used to doing certain things a certain way before AI, so it is equally a change management problem. And in order to get value from AI, we often talk about AI succeeds when AI gets embedded in the workflows of your everyday work. And if you look at your current workflows and you say, in order to get the benefit of AI, I need to reimagine my workflows or tweak my workflows to get that. So the teams who are open to doing that will see a lot more value. And the third thing I'll say is understand the limitations of AI. Holly talked about it. And I can put a link to an article that I wrote recently, Mick, where there's one unsolved problem with AI, and I'm talking about the latest and greatest AI. And that one unsolved problem is you can tell AI to read a page worth of instructions, and AI says, yes, I've read it. But there's no way to know that it has read every word of every sentence in that page and it has acted on it, right? That's an unsolved problem right now, even with the latest and greatest models that came out yesterday, right? So knowing that you can never be sure that it has taken into account every instruction. I wrote an article just recently where the problem is not that AI is completely wrong. The problem is that AI is silently and confidently wrong about one important detail. So knowing where you have to focus your energy on, take the benefit of AI, but know the points of judgment where you have to come in and say, I want to make sure that this incorrect information does not get out. So having an expectation around it, setting up teams to do that is important. And we are seeing that today. If you look at the guidance that is coming out of GSA, the guidance that is coming out from agencies in general, you're going towards a model where you're having to prove your work. Tell us where you did this work. Can you show us the traceability of how you wrote this? Where did this information come from? So plan ahead as you think about these tools and think about these requirements as you are evaluating these tools.
And I'll just close with this before we go to the next slide. I know we only have 7 minutes. In my opinion, a lot of what we're all facing is managing the hype. Everybody has seen, the hype cycle, and we are very much in the hype cycle of this. And I've talked to some CEOs who are like, I can get rid of my entire proposal team and just go utilize AI. And there's some people who think that, because there's been so much hype around the AI, and some of it is generated by people like us. And so it's really managing that. What really can it do? Because what it can't do is everybody who's on this phone, everybody who's on this webinar, you aren't just writing proposals. You're part of a governance process. At some point, you got to look your bosses in the eye and say, we can do this, especially as the government moves towards fixed price contracts, because everybody saw that executive order. Fixed price, you're signing up to some risk. Does everybody actually understand what this proposal says and the risk we're signing up to it? So you can't get rid of human beings because you're not getting rid of the governance that oversees the capture process, oversees the proposal process. So as you're looking at your tools, how does that tool fit into that governance process? And are you going to be able to properly govern what exactly is going through to your proposal? So I know we're down to just 6 minutes. And so I'm not seeing anything specific to this. Let's get to the last couple of elements here before we open this up to everybody. So in about, I would say in 4 minutes or less, let's kind of address this. Vishwas, where do you see AI? This is your world, right? You live it every single day. Where do you see AI in the federal contracting world? And specific to what we're talking about here, where do you see it heading?
I'll build on what I've been saying all along. So where I see it heading is people realizing that there's a lot of prep work, data work that they need to do. They'll be able to derive more value from that. understand that the judgment, and you said it very well, Mick, the proposal judgment belongs to the proposal teams. We are moving towards a world where tools bring you closer to making those judgment calls, so that AI can do this. It's reaching a point where it needs a proposal expert judgment. How can we bring that thing sooner? And I was saying earlier, we're getting into this world where we're having to prove our work. We're having to show that we have done hallucination checks. We're going to have to prove that the document that we are submitting is accurate. We're having to tell people what kind of tools were you using. So think about those things as you are evaluating the tools, you're adopting the tools. Think about overall from a perspective of an organizational change. And those are some of the things that I think going forward that you have to be important, and worry less about prompt engineering and what I have to say, worry more about the data and worry more about the workflow. That's what I would say, Mick.
So, Vishwas, I believe you really just answered that, but I do want to make sure Anna feels heard here. So in the Q&A, she wrote, thank you for bringing up that AI not reading all the content, how confident AI can be at its response. And she asks here, with AI being so confident many times in its mistakes, how do you evaluate which tool is better at these things and which aren't? And these things she's referencing are really making sure that it's reading the content and really being honest about its response, because it is being confident. Anna, hopefully I didn't screw up your question too much to Vishwas, but you can see that here. But Vishwas, she's asking a specific question, I believe, directly to you.
Question. And I'll be very brief. I know we are down to 3 minutes, and somebody from our team can post the links. I've written extensively about this great question, and I've written extensively about it. This is why I said earlier, tools that run a prompt in 30 seconds, I have an output. They're essentially offloading the responsibility to you, right? And now it's for you to catch, and it's human tendency to get complacent. After 4 lines, there might be a line that is not accurate. That's what Holly was talking about. So in my mind, the tools that are trying to be responsible are taking their time to make sure that all the requirements have been taken care of. And in our case, we are not generating an outline in 30 seconds. Far from it. We go through multiple layers of evaluation, and then we show you our work about how we get to that outline. And then you have an opportunity to say, I agree with this or not. And we do that at every step of the way. So whether you use our tool or not, these are the kinds of things that you have to look at, Anna, when evaluating the tool. It should not be, I have all the UI bells and whistles and I have the speed, but it's really about, tell me what the tool is doing and what are the points where I can come in and apply my judgment is ultimately what you want. And so please read the links that.
Yeah, we only have about 1 minute and 20 seconds left. Can we go to the poll question here? You're now educating us, so I'd appreciate everybody taking an opportunity to answer this. And the poll question is really, what is standing in the way of your team and meaningful AI adoption? So if everyone would take a moment and answer, we would greatly appreciate it, because you're educating us to make us better.
I would say, while we're waiting to answer John's question on whether it stores and processes CUI, I believe the answer is yes, correct. It still processes and stores CUI documentation.
Yeah, and so you're absolutely right, Holly. And I'm talking both tools. And John, obviously you do have to be careful over marketing hype. There's many people out there say that, we follow FedRAMP, and you know this because you're asking the question, John. We follow this, so therefore we're FedRAMP-like. Obviously that's not good enough. So when it comes to TechnoMile, I'll only speak to the 2 tools represented here. When it comes to TechnoMile, we are for government contractors, and FedRAMP is in our blood. So absolutely, our platform has been built on the ability to be able to store and process CUI. And I know Vishwas the same. And I know we're at time here. What was the poll response there? I think anyway, we've gone to this. Hopefully we can take a look at that later. And I know we're at 1 o'clock. We're out of time. Are there any other questions that anybody else has? that they would like to ask us? All right. If there are, you all can click on either of these to get a hold of either of us. We do want to thank you all for giving us 1 hour of your very valuable time. Hopefully you would consider us, but regardless, hopefully that your AI journey is fruitful. We'll always be here to have a frank and honest conversation with you. And hopefully we'll get a chance to speak with everyone at a future time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Do we provide a trial? The answer is yes. For TechnoMile, the answer is yes. I'll let pWin answer that. So
same answer. Same answer.
All right. Thanks, everyone.